Sunshine Coast to be here tonight. Now, Russell has a very rich background, and he's worked on the qualities of love all his life. In fact, he studied with Gerald Jampolsky in America. He's also written 3 books, not one, 3 books, and his latest book, this one, which just came out just before Christmas, is called The Spiritual Roots of the Tarot, the Cathar's Code Hidden in the Cards, where he talks about the importance of the Cathar's mystery teachings moving you towards transcendence. But not only that, there's more. Just before Christmas, if you read The New Dawn, just before Christmas, there was a beautiful article in there on his particular book. So tonight we're really looking forward to whatever you have to give us. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, lovely to see you all here. If anyone can't see me, move your chair. Just make sure the person beside you is okay with that. If you're here with your partner, sit together, because you guys are together all the time anyway. So, and I was told I didn't need a mask because I'm far enough away from you. But boy, they don't know me very well, because when I get excited, I can spray. That's not true. That's not true. So lovely to be here again. It was a couple of years ago that I was here, and your El Presidente was in attendance at that, and he went, "Oh yeah." He just gave me my whole talk in about 5 minutes. He remembered the whole thing. I was so impressed. And,
only bits.
And so it's lovely to have you here. Just so you all know, this lovely lady over here is at the back with the black mask, is my partner Rosie, who decided to travel up with me tonight, which is very gracious of her. And so it's lovely to be here and to be with you. During the course of this evening, if you have questions, please put your hand up, interrupt. And if I don't go back to what I was talking about, then just remind me where I was going if I get on a detour, and I can do that at different times. Tonight I'm going to basically give you a synopsis of the map and the mystery that these guys had, and what it means in terms of developing a consciousness of love. The very last couple of paragraphs in my book finish with this. The Cathar's theology of love could be described in one word: kindness. As much as they understood the deep mysteries in terms of how they were expressed in day-to-day life, it was simply about being committed to being kind. This reflects Jesus' theology of love. Quote, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another." End of quote. The bottom line was love. When asked of the commandments, which is the most important of them all, Jesus starts off by stating first and foremost that the Lord God was one, and then goes on to explain how you become at one with God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second one is just like the first: love your neighbour as you love yourself. There is no other commandment more important. End of quote. The Cathar Code was all about having the fool become constantly mindful of the choice to demonstrate love through being kind to oneself, to others, and to the planet. This medieval theology of love was reflected in these words of John: "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loves is born of God and knows God." It was this devotion to this theology of love that resulted in the Cathars being called bonhommes and bonnes femmes, good men and good women. And that's how my book finishes. It's a journey of love, you know. So I just want to get a real quick sense of how many people here are familiar with who the Cathars were. Okay, that's pretty cool. So just in summary, they were a Gnostic Christian group that were inspired by the Bogomils, who came out of the Eastern Bloc, basically, out of Bulgaria. And they started to emerge in Cologne, originally in Germany. They were a sort of an underground religious group, and they were found in Cologne, and it wasn't long and these guys appeared everywhere. It took off like wildfire. So they were found during the 12th century, and the last of the sort of recognised Cathars were finally wiped out by the Catholic Church in around 1350, thereabouts. And so basically these people had about a 200-year history. Unfortunately, in 1209, Innocent III, so concerned by the impact that these people were having, commissioned what was called the Albigensian Crusade, and he got the help of the northern French noblemen and their armies to come into southern France, and they basically systematically went through Cathar strongholds in the Languedoc region primarily, and basically exterminated the Cathars. There's a great, one of the great tragedies, and there were many of them, was Béziers, where when they went in, they couldn't distinguish between the Catholics and the Cathar, and they went back to Armaud, who was in charge of the crusade, and sort of said, look, this is the problem. And there's a famous line where he says, kill them all, God knows his own. And they literally over the next week killed somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people in the course of a week. And some of it incredibly brutal in terms of how it was carried out. And so the book I've written gives quite a lot of history, and that's important because it's really necessary to give context to the meaning of the cards. And we may cover some of that, but I don't want to focus on the history tonight. I want to focus on their theology and how that looked in the cards. So you're not going to get a lot of background information so much tonight as opposed to me just jumping right in, because there's some really important things here. I've been involved in a conscious approach to my spirituality since 1987, and it started with some things transpiring in my life, but Providence ended up having me meet and spend time with Jerry Jampolsky in the United States. And I studied with Jerry, and I studied with another lady in the Eastern States by the name of Susan Trout at the Center for Attitudinal Studies in Washington, DC, and ended up studying with Paul Farini, and who was up in Vermont, and so sort of I came back and started a Center for Attitudinal Studies in Dalby. So at that time, back in the late 80s, if you looked up the Center for Attitudinal Studies in the United States, 4 centres in Australia, it was Melbourne, Perth and Dalby. That's a bit of a... Not Brisbane, no, we were in Dalby. And that centre ran for 10 years, and we would meet twice a month, and it was phenomenal in terms of what we achieved. So that was the background to my work. But here's what became something of what I witnessed in my own experience, and then what I witnessed in other people who were on the spiritual path. Is that many people get a lot of knowledge and understanding and wisdom, but they still get shit off in the traffic. They still get annoyed by really simple things that shouldn't be annoying somebody who's on the spiritual path. Anyone sort of, you don't put your hands up, but do you relate to that? It's like, I've done all this work, but I still get angry. I still can't maintain peace as my way of being. I can have it for moments, and it's not sustainable. And this is the real gift of the Cathar theology, because they were able to give some enlightenment in terms of why it's so difficult for us to have spirituality in that enlightened way be sustainable in human consciousness. So I thought that that's what I'd like to focus on tonight as we go through this journey. Can everyone hear me okay? Nobody's getting spat on in the front? Excellent. All right. So, one of the things that happened for me, and this just didn't happen overnight, I was able to unlock the deeper mysteries of these cards. And just in terms of historical context, the original tarot cards, the Visconti cards, and those that came out of northern Italy around Milan, sort of during the sort of, were inspired the late 1300s, early 1400s. They weren't used for divining tools. They didn't belong to the suited sets of cards. That didn't happen until some time later. So they existed in their own right, and then later on were joined. Some would suggest that cards, this isn't a suggestion, this is a fact, cards attracted entertainment tax. And so that people didn't pay two lots of tax, they combined the cards together. So people were avoiding taxes even back in the 1400s. And so they put these together